morning, everyone. In Xin Chào Quý vị. I'm Benjamin Petlock, Senior Agricultural Attaché at the U.S. Consulate's Foreign Agricultural Service here in Ho Chi Minh City. And on behalf of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Consulate General, I'm delighted to welcome you to attend this webinar on the repopulation after African swine fever and U.S. support for recovery efforts, co-organized by the U.S. Livestock Genetics Export, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and ILDEX Vietnam. Due to COVID-19, we regret that representatives of U.S. LGE are unable to travel to Vietnam to meet you in person as planned, but we are glad that ILDEX Vietnam was able to make this webinar happen, which gives us an opportunity to connect with you all virtually today. We value the joint efforts by the Vietnamese government and Vietnam's producers and farmers to control African swine fever over the past 2 years. And U.S. Department of Agriculture's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service has worked closely with the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development's Department of Animal Health in formulating the National Plan for African Swine Fever Control, as well as facilitating collaborative research agreements on commercial production of ASF vaccines in Vietnam. FAS continues to follow the extensive efforts by the Vietnam livestock industry in rebuilding its swine population in the past year that has generated higher demand for good swine genetics. According to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, Vietnam imported nearly 44,000 pigs in 2020, with the United States being the third largest supplier. As you know, the United States is one of the world's leading pork-producing and exporting countries, accounting for about 10% of the world's supply. U.S. swine are unique in their ability to perform consistently under a variety of weather conditions and management styles. This high performance is the result of years of painstaking work by geneticists, breeders, and commercial producers who are committed to true genetic progress. In this webinar, U.S. LGE experts will provide you with insights on U.S. swine genetics, export and import procedures from the United States to Vietnam, and repopulation efforts after the end of African swine fever outbreaks. You will also watch a video about improving health by developing vaccination protocols at the end of this webinar. For those unfamiliar with USLGE, it is a nationwide livestock nonprofit trade association that represents the international market development interest of U.S. dairy, beef, sheep, swine, and horse breeding industries. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has been proactive in supporting the U.S. agricultural trade associations, including USLGE, in promoting international trade and expanding markets overseas. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and Foreign Agricultural Service also continue to support USLGE in their efforts to expand market development activities in Vietnam and provide necessary assistance to enhance collaboration between our two countries in the livestock sector. We are sure today's webinar will share some helpful information about U.S. swine genetics. We would like to take this opportunity to congratulate you on your efforts in controlling African swine fever. The Foreign Agricultural Service and USLGE look forward to seeing you in person at the USA Pavilion at ILDEX March 22 in Ho Chi Minh City. We wish you all health and success, and thank you for attending today's webinar.
Hi, I'm Doug Newcomb, Vice President of Genetics and Technology with the National Swine Registry. And I'm here today to discuss a little bit about herd population or herd repopulation strategies for Vietnam. So the situation that we find ourselves in most of Asia is that African swine fever has decimated your swine herd. So meat prices have skyrocketed, breeding herds have been affected, commercial herds have been affected, and we've got to figure out how we can get farms back up and running, get pork produced so that you can become more self-sufficient. So do we focus on the breeding herd or do we focus on our commercial herd first during this repopulation process? So I'm here today to discuss 4 or 5 different options that you can use in order to begin your repopulation effort. So I think the first and most important thing is we've got to have more GGP and GP breeding stock in the country. So whether that means utilizing what you already have in country, or as we're going to find out from some of our later speakers, importing that breeding stock from the US in order to populate those GGP herds, to be able to make more GP females, to be able to make your F1 females on down the genetic pyramid. So you can utilize those in-country breeding stock herds to continue to make those traditional F1 York Landrace females to be bred to Duroc boars to increase your meat production. You can also utilize those farms that already have F1 females on them You can back cross those to a Yorkshire or a Landrace boar in order to make a back cross, or what some people call an F2 female, that's still maternal in nature, that you can utilize to put in your commercial herds. You can also utilize females that are already being produced at commercial herds, which would typically be Duroc sired or a terminally sired market gilt. I think in order to repopulate the entire herd, I think it's going to take a combination of all of these options in order to make it happen. So the things we have to consider when we go through this process are biosecurity, maintaining the biosecurity of the farms we're utilizing to make those replacement females, in addition to the commercial herds. You've got to look at where a ready supply of females are, how quickly you can get those females into production, what those females cost, and then what the production performance is on those females. Because we know that those terminally sired females are probably going to have reduced performance in a sow farm. So in terms of biosecurity, from the most biosecure to what we would call the least biosecure would be those F1 females that come out of a breeding stock herd. The next least biosecure would be those F2 or back cross females that would come out of those F1 herds. And then those commercial market gilts are probably not raised in the most biosecure facilities in the country. So we may encounter some health challenges when trying to utilize those females. In terms of supply, those commercial market gilts would be the most readily available if you can find them from a biosecure source. Then you would have those F2 or back cross females, and then your traditional F1 gilts would be available from your breeding stock herds. The ones that could be brought into production the quickest, again, would be those commercial market females that should be readily available in those commercial herds. Again, if you can find them from a biosecure source. Those back cross maternal gilts and then F1 gilts, if you were to have to change the maternal semen that you were sending to farms, it would again take longer to get those into production than the gilts that are already readily available. Cost becomes important, an important consideration in this as well. One would think that those commercial females would be the least expensive in purchasing those from a producer. Those back cross females would take, they would be gilts that would be coming from a herd that has F1s on site now, and they would simply be changing the semen bottle to a York or Landrace to make those females. So they would probably be a little more expensive. And again, those traditional F1 gilts would be the most, what we would assume to be the most expensive in the system. So in terms of production, the most productive females that we would see out of these three different options would be those F1 gilts. That's the main reason that we use those F1s in commercial production now. That's the benefit of using a York Landrace female to take into account 100% maternal heterosis. The back cross females that would be either 3/4 Yorkshire or 3/4 Landrace would still exhibit about 85% maternal heterosis. So not quite as good as your F1 gilts, but they would be far and away better than those commercial market gilts. Those commercial market gilts would have 100% maternal heterosis, but they would be half a Duroc or Pietron sired, so that their maternal genetic merit would not be as great as if they were from a Yorkshire or a Landrace sire. So if we look at the production considerations, these are based on a per litter performance. And if we assume that our F1 females that would be our most productive, we just call those our base of some number, whatever the average is in your system. We would expect those F1 or F2 or back cross females to have about one pig less born live, one pig less weaned per litter. If we look at those commercial or Duroc sired females, they would be at 2 pigs less total born and about 2.5 pigs less per litter born alive and weaned. So we've got to take that into consideration as we look at trying to repopulate our sow herd. If we look at your annual production loss, if you've got a 2,500 sow farm that's farrowing about 5,500 litters a year, you're looking at at about 5,000 fewer pigs total born, 6,000 fewer pigs weaned if you're using those back-cross females that are 3/4 York or 3/4 landrace. And if we look at those commercial females, if you were to populate an entire herd of those with 2,500 sows, you would be looking at 12 to 14,000 fewer pigs per year that you would produce out of your farm. So if you think about what the price of live pigs are now, that number gets to be astronomical when it comes to, yes, we need to fill crates, but we need to fill crates with the most maternally oriented females that we can find. I think at the end of the day, those commercial females would work. They would fill crates, they would produce pigs, but you've got to be able to look at, does the live price at the end of the day still help you make money when you get those pigs to market? I've just quickly gone through the things that we need to consider as we look at repopulating the sow herd in Vietnam. In conclusion, I think we've never seen a situation like this where a disease comes in and wipes out nearly 100% of every pig that it encounters. We've never seen anything this widespread with that type of mortality rate. I don't think any one of the options that I've listed today will work by itself. I think that you've got to do multiple things in order to fill crates on sow farms to continue to create market pigs and to put meat into the market. I think initially you need to look at importation of genetically superior breeding stock to replace those breeding stock herds that have been decimated by African swine fever. Then I think you need to use what's available immediately, whether that's a Duroc sired gilt, whether that's an F2 or back cross gilt, switch semen at some of those F1 farms to continue to create maternal replacements for your farm. And then attempt to make additional purebreds at the highest levels of your genetic pyramid so that you can increase F1 production as time goes on. I think that it's going to be best to utilize multiple options. As I've said here, use what's available immediately. You only use those what I would call genetically inferior gilts. So those commercial gilts or those back cross gilts. You only use those gilts to fill your crates until you have F1s become available. So as a long-term solution, the only way to do it is to get back to F1 gilt production to supply all of your commercial herds. So I appreciate your time and thank you for your participation.
Hello, my name is Bobby Dowson with the State of Illinois, USA Department of Agriculture. And for 26 years, I've been an international marketing representative and a member partner of the U.S. Livestock Genetic Export Incorporated. I have many friends in Vietnam as I've hosted many pork producers and grain buyers on trade missions to Illinois annually. One of our key projects is our annual Illinois Pork Industry Tour, where for 4 days we showcase Illinois swine genetics, feed ingredients, and equipment. En route to Des Moines, Iowa, which is the site of the annual World Pork Expo, the largest pork-specific trade show. In coming months, when it's safe to do so, we look forward to meeting all of you in person again at trade shows and trade missions such as this. As our brochure shows, besides exporting quality breeding swine, Illinois also helps export dairy cattle, beef cattle, horses, sheep, and goats. I work in the headquarter office in Springfield, Illinois, and we also have a Latin American office in Mexico City. But more importantly, we have our Asian office in Hong Kong, ran by Miss Haley Huey. Haley recruits all international participants from Vietnam on all of our missions and trade shows. Illinois Swine Genetics currently performs well under a variety of conditions and management styles. This is a result of painstaking work by geneticists, breeders, and commercial producers who are committed to true genetic progress. The U.S. is one of the leading pork producing and exporting countries, and Illinois is the 4th largest pork state. All breeds are represented in Illinois, such as Yorkshire, Landrace, Duroc, Hampshire, Berkshire, and Pietrin, and other exotic breeds, which possess the most desirable carcass and production traits sought by breeders and producers around the world. Illinois offers everything from pure great-grandparent stock to crossbreds in both boars and gilts, as well as fresh and frozen semen. And speaking of genetics, we have two of Illinois' best genetic seed stock operations here to speak with you. We have Justin Fix of Acuity Genetics and Mike Groman of Cedar Ridge Farms. Justin, please start by telling us about Acuity Genetics.
Thank you, Bobby. As he said, my name is Justin Fix with Acuity Genetics. My official title is Director of Business Development and Genetic Improvement. Next few slides, we'll talk and give you a little bit of background on Acuity, where we came from, and what we have to offer. First, to start out with, Acuity Genetics is a wholly owned entity of the Mashoff family. The Mashoff Swine Production, or the Mashoffs LLC, is a fully owned family organization. We have about 1,100 employees today. Spent some rapid growth through the early 2000s, to peaking out around just about 200,000 commercial sows. During this time, there was also a heavy investment into the internal genetic programs, with a focus on creating a competitive advantage within the U.S. domestic market from commercial production standpoint via the use of superior genetics. Today, the system has about 180,000 sows, producing just short of 4.5 million market pigs annually across 7 states in the Midwestern part of the United States. Acuity Genetics is a vital part of the Mashoff system. As I mentioned, Acuity was created from a need to differentiate the commercial business from other commercial producers within the U.S. Acuity, while may sound new, is not a new genetic program by any means. We're going on 10 plus years of product development and validation. So not only developing our competitive advantage, but also validating that in a commercial system. So it's not good enough just to produce genetics. We also have to ensure they compete and validate that performance at the commercial level. As I said, Acuity maintains a portfolio of products focused on delivering integrated system value. We like to say from the boar stud to the packing plant is where we think there's an opportunity to create value within genetic improvement. Today, we are a 3-breed, purebred-based genetic system. So we have a purebred Duroc, Landrace, and Yorkshire. Each one of those is selected independently on their own index, but with the realization that those pigs are ultimately combined to produce a commercial market animal. So what I mean is the index for the Landrace and the index for the Yorkshire may be different, but they're designed in a way to create the most value when selected together for the commercial parent animal. The same thing with our Duroc focus when that's combined with that parent animal. A little bit more on our population. So as I said, we're supported within the Mashoff system. Today, we have just short of 6,500 purebred animals in our nucleus system across 5 farms. Those 5 farms are specifically selected in a way to have contingency across farms, but also have populations within those farms that are large enough to allow us to drive genetic progress. So you'll see we have the 5 farms there, the 3 lines, and each one of those lines is represented in at least 3 farms to give you a total population of about 1,500 Duroc sows and 2,500 Landrace and 2,500 Yorkshire sows. Those populations are spread mostly across the Midwest. A little more information on the Acuity. So as I referenced earlier as well, when we think about our production, we often will talk about our nucleus production or our nucleus numbers, but in reality, the important part is how those animals perform at the commercial farm. We can have beautiful trends, beautiful numbers at the nucleus, but those animals aren't performing for the commercial customer across the world. It doesn't matter. And what I've described here or shown you here is just a rough example of what I mean. So this would be the commercial performance system over the last 6 years, and what that improvement in born alive and total born has looked like. But what I also want to make sure I reference under here, we're not talking about a few thousand representation. This is 180,000 commercial sows. And this is the performance numbers we look at and the sort of validity that comes with the program when we're driving the genetic progress of our animals within our nucleus population. So again, as we think about selecting animals, it's making sure that they perform from the bore stud to the packing plant. They excel in terms of the number of pigs they produce, the wean to market efficiency performance, and the ability to perform in a variety of environments, feet and leg structure, their appetite, things like that, that also allow us to have a pig that'll perform across a variety of systems. I want to thank you for your time and the quick introduction of Acuity, and we look forward to hopefully visiting or meeting with some of you and possibly doing business in the future. Thank you.
Justin, thanks for the nice presentation and explaining Acuity Genetics. Much appreciated. And now we'll go to Mike Groman with Cedar Ridge Farms. Mike, take it away. Tell us about Cedar Ridge Farm Genetics.
Hello, I'm Mike Groman of Cedar Ridge Farms. I'm one of 6 brothers that are co-owners and operators of Cedar Ridge. Cedar Ridge was established in 1955 by my late parents, Fred and Betty Groman. The brothers in order by age are Bob, Dennis, Stan, myself, Randy, and Freddie. All 6 brothers have always been hands-on workers at our farm, along with approximately 15 other employees. Cedar Ridge has approximately 1,500 sows at 2 different sow units. And they're located 17 miles apart. And we have 2 boar studs that house about 100 boars total, about 50 in each stud, which are about 10 miles apart. We feel that's a good way to handle the biosecurity in case of a disease outbreak. Of the 1,500 sows, there's approximately 400 landrace sows, 550 Yorkshire, 300 Duroc, 200 Berkshire, and 50 Hampshire. Of the Yorkshire and the landrace, there's about 300 sows that we use to make landrace York F1 gilts for commercial maternal replacement females for our customers. For many years, Cedar Ridge has been one of the top recorders and top sellers of purebred landrace York and Duroc in America. But one of the main, we do sell fresh semen and to customers, and we provide genetics for numerous domestic commercial customers. But one of the main areas of our business is international exports. Over the many years of Cedar Ridge, we've sold to many countries around the world, and this slide has a few of the countries that we've sold to in the most recent years. At the present time, we maintain a very high health status at Cedar Ridge. We are naive for PRRS, PED, APP, and mycoplasma pneumonia. The next 3 slides will just show you some genetic trend charts. On the STAGES program, we do use the STAGES program through the National Swine Registry as our genetic improvement indexing program. We gather all the data for performance traits, we weigh them for growth rate, and we ultrasound them for back fat and loin eye to establish the indexes. We gather all the data for maternal traits, for the number barn and the litter weights and all those things. All of our boars are weighed and ultrasound for back fat and loin. I said that. So we also do individual birth weights on all the piglets. So if you look at this first chart here for Yorkshires, we've got 2 charts for EPDs on number born alive. The blue line is the Cedar Ridge EPD, and the red line is the average of the breed. And you can see we've got a pretty good difference in there between them. And also the litter birth weight is kind of the same way. We're pretty far above the breed average on those EPDs. And then the next slide is the landrace, and it shows pretty much the same thing. It's got a pretty big spread between the breed average on number born alive and the litter birth weights. Then we go to the Durocs, and the Durocs show the terminal SAR index at Cedar Ridge to be an average of 130, and the breed average to be at 120. So we're 10 points above the breed average there in the Duroc breed. And then the other chart shows the a good EPD for the pounds to lean. So all my life, I've analyzed and selected pigs using a balanced approach. We take a lot of pride in combining phenotype with genotype in a very complete package. We also feel that one of the most important things in the selection of animals is a feet and leg structure, being very sound and free moving. I like to select pigs that are big frame, long bodied, wide made, and with a lot of volume and muscle. So I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to tell you about our farm, and we'd be looking forward to visiting with you in the future. Thanks again.
Thanks, Mike Groman, for telling us about Cedar Ridge Farm Genetics. And now that you've seen our genetics, we welcome you to Illinois. Hopefully in the future, when it's safe to do so, we will have you back in Illinois in 2022. Now let's go to Tony Clayton. He'll tell you about how to get them from point A to point B.
Bobby, thank you for the opportunity and the introduction. And also like to thank the organizers and the folks at FAS in Vietnam for letting us present the U.S. genetics and services that we offer. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about the selection and export process of U.S. swine to Vietnam, and just a couple of points that my involvement in this industry. I made my first visit to Vietnam in August of 1996, so this will be a 25th anniversary for me as far as visiting Vietnam. And we also made the first direct shipment of pigs from the United States into Hanoi in 1998. So I've enjoyed the many relationships and the amount of swine that we have been able to export to Vietnam over the years, and seen the progress made in Vietnam using U.S. genetics, and the opportunity to make a lot of new friends and develop a lot of relationships. Again, I'm going to spend a few moments talking about the selection and export process of U.S. swine to Vietnam. And one thing that we know now about African swine fever, it's going to change the way that we've done business with not only Vietnam, but with all of our customers around the world. Biosecurity is going to be tightened. It has changed things dramatically, regardless. For exporting pigs to Latin America, South America, or Asia, you're going to see a new process of selecting pigs from the United States. You know, we're going to have fewer visitors allowed at the farms, and these are some things you're just going to have to kind of get adjusted to for if you've been to the United States before to select pigs. The days of probably bringing big groups of 10, 15, or 20 people at a time to come in to select. You're going to see a lot of farms that have provided pigs for export are going to have some new guidelines and some biosecurity requirements that we're going to have to follow, even if they do allow visits to the farm. You're going to see new policies enforced, selectors having to arrive in the United States 3 or 4 days before going to the farms to have the biosecurity and to make sure that you've been away from any animals in Vietnam. And we do everything that we can to protect the farms here in the United States and overall our swine industry, and not taking any chance not only for African swine fever, but we have to worry about foot and mouth disease. United States has been free of foot and mouth disease since 1929. These are some things that have helped us export our genetics of all species over the years of having healthy animals and a healthy industry. So again, you're going to see strict protocol enforced, things of no electronic equipment permitted at the farms. You'll definitely shower in, shower out, and these things will be strictly enforced. And so selection time in the United States of going farm to farm in a matter of a few hours will change. So there are some things that will change our selection process, the times that you come into the United States, and your time away from your operation. Farm visits in the United States are a great experience. You get to come in and sit with the breeders, talk with them, see a little bit about their production and how they produce pigs, to share not only their expertise and their opinion, but you can also share your experiences with the pigs you've imported. And we like to hear the good things. We also like to hear the bad experiences, and it'll help our industry do a better job for you in the future. As you come in, you want to always spend some time with our breeders to discuss your genetic needs and goals, and see where the synergy is between you as an importer and our side as an exporter, and to make sure that the genetics that we offer, the genetic information coincides with what you're trying to do, and so you have success at your farm. We want you to come in, we want you to ask about health programs, the nutrition programs, and some of the other things that go on. And we want you to understand the genetic improvement and the traits that you have in the interest. Whether you've imported pigs from Europe or swine genetics from Canada or other countries, we all have different genetic programs. So it is a little difficult to compare one trait to a European trait, because we're all weighted differently in different economic values. And so it's time to get to know the breeder, to know the program, see their genetic improvement that they've made over the years, and how this impacts your farm in Vietnam. When you come in to select, we ask that you keep in mind that you select the appropriate age and the appropriate size that meets your requirements. A lot of people come in and have the mindset that bigger is always better. So you're furnished with a lot of records at all the farms that we work with and all the breeders that have put a lifetime into genetic programs, performance testing, and with that information that they have on their herd, with the information from the National Swine Registry, there's a lot of genetic records that can come in. We have a lot of people that maybe spend too much time on websites and thinking that they're going to come in with unrealistic selection values or requirements, where they're trying to select pigs out of the top 1 or 2% of maybe the whole U.S. population. A lot of the high quality end of the pigs that are being produced, whether it's Cedar Ridge Farms or Acuity, they're going to keep the very, very best pigs for themselves, and that's how they make their genetic improvement. But understand that once we start this process of blood testing, making arrangements for transportation, that these pigs will continue to grow well after you leave the farm, and they'll be a different size, a different animal when you see them when they arrive at your farm or your quarantine in Vietnam. The actual process of health testing for export is basically a 21-day testing for export for Vietnam. And this protocol was agreed to between our U.S. Department of Agriculture, Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, Veterinary Services, and Vietnam. This is a protocol that was updated in December 2000. So it's been in place for over 20 years. It's worked well, but it makes it a very quick process. So again, automatically, you're going to have more than 21 to 25 days growth from the time that you've selected the pigs until they arrive in Vietnam. The export process of once the health testing has been completed, the health papers have been approved, the pigs are transported to an airport, and most all shipments that depart the United States for Vietnam are transported to Chicago. And there's 2 or 3 different airlines that are used to transport pigs to Vietnam. But by USDA, U.S. Department of Agriculture rules and regulations, really the animals only have to rest a minimum of 2 hours, feed, water, and rest at Chicago. But because of airplane schedule, logistics, you'll find out many times that we quarantine these pigs in Chicago 3 to 5 hours, and sometimes they're from 8 to 12 hours. And during that time, the pigs are individually inspected by USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service veterinarians for disease, last-minute injury, or any health concerns. Any animal that is not deemed healthy is rejected at the airport by the USDA veterinarians and are not allowed for exports. So many times people are asking for their shipping documents and the identification of all of these pigs that we're going to export, and they want to know why we can't have those 2 or 3 days in advance. Is we are still doing this process right up until the loading time in Chicago to make sure that you get the healthiest pigs, pigs that are in condition to travel, that we can possibly send you. So a lot of these decisions are made at the very last moment. Once the pigs have met their feed, water, and rest requirement, and they've been inspected by USDA, they're transported into the airport. And the current system that we have in Chicago, it's about a 30 to 45 minute truck transport into the airport. During that time in the loading, USDA veterinarian is on hand for supervision of watching the pigs load into the crates. They monitor the animal welfare to make sure the pigs don't get too hot, they're comfortable, and they stay at the airplane until the doors are closed and the plane moves for taxi and for takeoff. Prior to loading, the crates are prepared with bedding and water. We also, our company, we use electrolytes in all the waters, and then we re-water the pens again before they move to the airplane. So many times airlines treat live animals like general freight, and they wanted them loaded maybe 3, maybe even 4 hours before takeoff. So we have to stay there, monitor the pigs, make sure that they have full water tanks, so they're ready to be full when they leave, because it's not a direct shipment to either Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, so it is a long process. Regardless of what size shipment is made, there are various options for pigs as they travel to either Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi. And there's been many welfare changes in plane shipments over the past couple of years. When we say a position, we're talking about one crate. So a 747 on the main deck can hold up to 30 crates of pigs. If you go back in history over the last 4 or 5 years, if we had pigs at 50 kilo or 60 kilo shipping weight, we could ship as many as 1,100 to 1,200 pigs on a flight. But with new animal welfare guidelines by the makers of the aircraft, Boeing, and some of the airlines, they are starting to restrict the number of animals that we can actually put on a plane with new formulations of heat, temperature, number of animals. So you're automatically going to see a lot of these numbers change regarding individual airline policy. So some flights will only carry 800 pigs. Some flights will carry 900 pigs. It depends on the routing. Most of the routing for sending pigs to Vietnam, the plane would depart Chicago, Illinois. It would stop in Anchorage, Alaska for fuel. And most of the time we have a flight crew change where we get a new pilot, co-pilot, engineer, navigator, what have you, a complete crew change at that point. The plane will take fuel. And if we're using China Airlines as an example, it would continue from Anchorage, Alaska to Taipei, Taiwan. Then it would go to Singapore and then Ho Chi Minh City or Hanoi, depending on what the schedule of airlines change the first day of every month. So that's one example of using China Airlines. In years past, we used airlines such as Korean Airlines or Asiana. But the health situation of transit countries come into play, where that would be a shorter trip, but with recent outbreaks of foot and mouth disease in countries like Korea, Vietnam may not allow us to stop at that transit country. So finding a route of going in to your country, it could require us to go through Taiwan. It could also be other options through Hong Kong. So these are things that we have to look at. And again, the airlines change their schedule on the first day of every month. So it is something that comes into play when we tell you a shipment is going to arrive at a certain day, a certain time. And I've told you that on the 28th or the 29th of a month, you know, on the first of the month it changes, and we may be changing that schedule. So it's really important that we try to get the pigs from the departure location to the arrival location as quickly as we can. Our cargo planes, as I said, we can move them by full charter, or we can move by position. So we have people come in and buy one crate, 2 crate, 5 crates. As an example, we sent 5 crates to Hong Kong last week. The week before that, we sent one crate to South Korea. So we can accommodate any size shipment as long as we have airline service to you. We also try to maintain a flight temperature between 13 and 16 degrees Celsius on the plane. With our full charter planes, we try to put one of our people, our staff people, as an attendant on the plane to travel with the pigs to monitor the airflow through the aircraft. But the thing in the last year with COVID and airlines trying to protect their flight crews, they have restricted any third party or people like from our company to accompany the pigs. Now, we think that this will change here in the future, but it's real important to have somebody on that plane, because sometimes we've seen pilots that think that they're comfortable at 23 Celsius or 24 Celsius on the airplane because they feel comfortable. We all know a pig can stress at a much lower temperature. And then when you start to put 700 or 800 pigs on the plane, that plane heats up very quickly. The export process is one link in this chain, and being ready to receive the animals on your side in Vietnam is just as important. We may be exporting from Chicago late at night or early in the morning, where we have very cool temperatures and good wind, but with flight delays and flight schedules, we could be arriving in your country at the heat of the day. So being prepared to receive the shipment is, I can't stress, of being ready. So we try to present all advanced shipping documents emailed to you as a buyer or your customs broker well in advance. That way you can do all of the pre-customs clearance and the animal health clearance by your local health authorities. Having water, ice, and food. When I say food, I'm thinking things like watermelon, cabbage, things that we found out over the years that really rehydrates a pig after a long trip. And it's easy to get into the crate. You'll be surprised at how good cabbage and watermelon and these type of things can do. We actually use a lot of ice when we load in Chicago, but having ice in those crates, especially if you're coming into a very hot, humid country like Ho Chi Minh City can be in July and August. So these are some things that you can do to help ensure that the pigs, once they're there, you can re-water our water tanks and have something for the pigs to eat. And then having the proper equipment to offload the crates, like walkways or trucks that will accommodate the size of the shipping crates that we use in this process. As you can see in this picture, this is really a standard triple deck crate. It's 3 levels, and there's a door for each level of this crate. So we're regulated by our U.S. Department of Agriculture of how many pigs that we can put in each level. Sometimes with airlines, they regulate us by how many animals we put in the crate for weight of what we call a pivot weight of that whole position. A shipment we made to Hong Kong last week, the airline had their own loading schedule of how many pigs that we could put on top of the crate. So these are just some things that we have to deal with on a shipment by shipment basis. We see a lot of clients that will have trucks that can haul pigs loose. They'll unload the pigs from the crate into a truck that has racks on it and move the pigs to their farm, while other customers will take the whole shipping crate with them. And we have to make arrangements. These crates are built on aluminum pallets. And sometimes we can build crates that have breakaways where you can pick this crate up off the aluminum airline pallet, take that crate, and that's a single-use crate. Once it goes to your farm, it doesn't have to be returned. But if you take that crate away with the aluminum pallet underneath, sometimes the airlines will ask you to make maybe a $1 and $1,000 or $2,000 deposit on each one of those aluminum pallets until they're returned. So these are just some of the things to make this process go faster of when they arrive in your country. Just in summary, successful shipments are made by advanced planning. You cannot plan too much. We have the adage here of we plan the trade and then try to trade the plan. Follow the requirements not only of the export country, but of the import country. And then working with your government customs officials to expedite the process so you're not held up on paperwork when they arrive, and be ready for unexpected, hot weather, plane delays. So those type things that you can do just to be ready when they come in. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and if we can be any service to the industry in Vietnam, we're happy to do so. Thanks again.
Hi, I'm Doug Newcomb, Vice President of Genetics and Technology for the National Swine Registry, also known as the NSR. We are the Performance Pedigree Breed Association for American Duroc Hampshire Landrace and Yorkshire pigs. We are also a proud member of U.S. Livestock Genetics Export, USLGE. The NSR's membership is comprised of internationally known, privately owned purebred breeding stock suppliers, AI centers, and exporters. Our genetics supplying members have spent decades using cutting-edge technology to make dramatic genetic improvement which is available to their domestic and international clientele. The swine testing and genetic evaluation system, or stages, provided by the NSR utilizes member reproductive and performance data to calculate genetic merit for traits of economic importance. The membership takes those results back to the farm to make selection decisions that ultimately maximize their customers' bottom line. NSR members provide these genetically superior animals in a high health package available for shipment to all parts of the globe. Maintaining high health isn't always easy, but is a necessary step in providing advanced genetics. And with the pressure from both governments and consumers to reduce the use of antibiotics on farm, vaccination against disease has become even more important. I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Heep Vu, Assistant Professor and Respiratory Disease Virologist from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, to discuss implementation of on-farm vaccination programs.
Xin kính chào quý vị, tôi tên là Hiệp Vũ, hiện đang là trợ lý giáo sư tại trường đại học Nebraska Lincoln. Lab của tôi chuyên nghiên cứu và phát triển những loại vaccine để phòng bệnh cho heo. Và hôm nay tôi xin chia sẻ đến quý vị một số kinh nghiệm để mà xây dựng liệu trình vaccine hiệu quả và hợp lý cho trang trại của quý vị. Như quý vị đã biết, thì mỗi cái trang trại có một quy mô chăn nuôi khác nhau, cách quản lý khác nhau, và do vậy tình hình dịch bệnh cũng khác nhau. Một liệu trình vaccine không thể nào áp dụng cho tất cả các trang trại. Khi xây dựng một liệu trình vaccine, quý vị nên lưu ý 4 điểm sau đây. Điểm lưu ý thứ nhất, quý vị cần xác định là loại vaccine nào thì cần cho trang trại của quý vị. Đặc điểm dịch tễ thì khác nhau ở mỗi các khu vực. Có những loại bệnh chỉ xảy ra ở khu vực này nhưng không xảy ra ở khu vực khác. Ví dụ như là bệnh lở mồm long móng thì đang xảy ra ở rất là nhiều nước châu Á, nhưng bệnh này lại không có ở Mỹ. Do vậy, vaccine lở mồm long móng thì bắt buộc đối với nhiều nước ở châu Á, nhưng loại vaccine này lại không được sử dụng tại Mỹ. Hơn nữa, heo ở các miễn dịch cho tới khi xuất chuồng. Những bệnh như E. coli và PEDV sẽ giúp cho quý vị đánh giá được hiệu quả của chương trình vaccine mà quý vị đang sử dụng. Đồng thời nó cũng giúp cho quý vị xác định được các cái vấn đề đang xảy ra trong trang trại. Từ đó mình có cái giải pháp để khắc phục. Tôi tên là Hiệp Vũ, hiện đang là trợ lý giáo sư tại trường đại học Nebraska Lincoln. Nếu quý vị cần thêm thông tin, vui lòng liên hệ tôi tại địa chỉ email dưới đây, hoặc có thể vào trang web uslge.org